Welcome, friends. I'm glad you're here tonight. Before we begin, tell me, when did you first discover Miss Marple? Was it a book on a quiet evening, or a memory shared by someone dear? Share your story below. I always read your comments. Now settle in with your tea or coffee. Tonight's mystery takes us to Wetherby, here in the north of England. A calm place, until something shifted. Miss Marple sensed trouble, before anyone else did. It was a calm morning in Wetherby. The air held a gentle stillness. Shops opened slowly. Doors creaked in their usual way. Nothing rushed. Nothing hurried. Just the quiet rhythm of a small English town. Miss Marple stepped into Wetherby High Street. She carried a small bundle of letters. 3 envelopes, each neatly addressed. She planned to post them before visiting a friend. It was her simple routine, and routines kept her mind sharp. She paused at the corner. A delivery cart rolled past. The driver lifted his hat to her. She nodded back. She liked familiar faces. Wetherby had many. It reminded her of Street Mary Mead, but with wider lanes and a slightly busier morning pace. Miss Marple adjusted her scarf and continued toward the red post box. She walked carefully, avoiding the loose paving stone near the bakery door. A small habit. A practical one. Years of observation taught her to notice what others stepped over. Ahead of her, Harriet Bloom stood outside her little shop. Harriet ran a modest stationery store. She was cheerful but easily flustered by small inconveniences. Today she faced one. Her shop sign refused to hang straight. It tilted stubbornly to one side. Harriet muttered at it under her breath. Nothing harsh, just a gentle reprimand. A very Harriet response. Miss Marple slowed her steps. She found ordinary moments useful. People revealed themselves in such moments, and she liked Harriet. A pleasant woman, a little scattered, but warm-hearted. Harriet tugged the sign again. It shifted a little, then sagged back. She sighed. "Honestly, you were fine yesterday," she whispered. Miss Marple smiled softly. Some problems in life behave just like that. Willing one day, stubborn the next. Miss Marple reached her. "Good morning, Harriet," she said. Harriet turned quickly. "Oh, Miss Marple. Morning. This sign is giving me trouble again." Her voice carried mild frustration. "Nothing serious. Just the morning's first challenge. Perhaps the bracket is loose," Miss Marple suggested. Simple. Logical. Harriet glanced at the bracket. Yes, I suppose it could be. But she didn't check it. She simply stared at the sign, as if waiting for it to correct itself. Miss Marple posted her letters. Each one slipped into the box with a soft thud, a small sound, predictable, comforting. She turned back toward Harriet. Before she could speak again, a faint crack sounded above them. Sharp, short, a clean break in the quiet, morning air. Miss Marple lifted her eyes. Harriet flinched slightly. Both women paused. The overhead wires ran along the edge of the street. Thin, dark, still in place. Nothing had fallen. Nothing visible had snapped. Yet the sound remained clear in Miss Marple's mind. She trusted her hearing. She trusted patterns. Something had shifted, even if others would shrug it off. Harriet looked up. "Did you hear that?" she asked. Her voice held a faint tremor. Miss Marple nodded once. "Yes." Something gave way. Harriet scanned the rooftops. "I don't see anything wrong." Miss Marple kept her gaze steady. "That doesn't mean nothing happened." Morning routines rarely produced surprises. But small changes mattered. Small breaks mattered. They often pointed to bigger things. Miss Marple understood that better than most. She looked down the length of Wetherby High Street. Shops, signs, windows. Everything appeared normal. But something unseen had shifted. Something subtle, something waiting, and Miss Marple felt it. Something small, but wrong. Miss Marple walked toward Dr. Rowan Hale's small house on the edge of Wetherby. She held her umbrella close. The sky had grown heavier since morning. Clouds drifted low. A storm waited above the rooftops. Not loud yet, just pressing. Quiet pressure in the air. She had come to return a knitted sleeve she had mended for him, A simple errand. Nothing urgent. Nothing unusual. Dr. Hale relied on her from time to time. His housekeeper mended most things, but never with the same neat stitch Miss Marple used. She reached the front path. Gravel shifted under her shoes. A soft sound. Predictable. Comforting in its way. She moved toward the door. She planned to knock gently and hand over the parcel, then leave before the rain began. But she never reached the knocker. A sharp telephone ring cut through the quiet house. It startled the still air. It startled Miss Marple, too. The sound had urgency, not the ordinary ring, a faster one, a worried one. She paused. Her hand hovered near the door. Another ring followed, sharper, more insistent. Miss Marple stepped back slightly. She did not wish to intrude, but she listened. Listening often revealed more than speaking. Then the ringing stopped. A faint rustle sounded inside. Footsteps. A chair moved. Then Dr. Hale's voice. Low. Tense. Not his usual warm tone. Miss Marple could not make out the words, but she heard the strain. Something was wrong. She waited. She knew better than to interrupt a doctor's call, especially when urgency carried through the door. She held the small parcel against her coat. The wind pressed lightly at her back. A small push, a signal that the weather was shifting. Inside, Dr. Hale spoke again, this time louder. Still not clear, but the tone sharpened. A worried exclamation, a long pause. Then a single phrase reached her clearly through the wood. Eliza, calm yourself. I'm coming. Miss Marple's eyebrows lifted slightly. Nurse Eliza Penn rarely lost her composure. If she called in a panic, the matter was serious indeed. Miss Marple stepped closer to the door. Eliza Penn served at Arkwell Manor. She looked after Mrs. Lydia Arkwell, a woman known for delicate health and sudden spells. But most spells were manageable. Eliza handled them with quiet skill. Something must have changed. A gust of wind rattled the gate. The storm gathered strength. A few drops touched Miss Marple's sleeve. The timing felt strange. Urgent calls often came at bad moments. But this one felt worse. Not only urgent, unexpected. And Miss Marple trusted that feeling. The door latch clicked. Footsteps approached. Miss Marple adjusted her posture. She expected Dr. Hale to leave quickly. No time for small talk. No time for mended sleeves. The door opened, and Miss Marple saw his face. Drawn. Tight. Nothing like his usual calm expression. Worry sat plainly in his eyes. Dr. Hale opened the door, unusually pale. Dr. Rowan Hale stepped onto the small front step. He held his medical bag tightly. His hands did not shake, but the tension showed. Miss Marple recognized it at once. Doctors rarely showed fear. Not openly. But urgency revealed the truth. And this morning the truth was quite clear. I should go at once, he said. Miss Marple nodded. I understand. Then she added, in her calm, steady way, you should not go alone. He hesitated. Rain began touching the edge of his coat. The sky sank lower. Clouds pressed down on Weatherby like a slow warning. Not dramatic, just heavy, just present. Miss Marple stepped closer. You will need help, she said. Practical help, and company. He opened his mouth to protest, but a familiar engine rumbled from the road. A soft, uneven sound. A sound Miss Marple knew well. Harriet Bloom's old blue Morris turned the corner, its left headlamp flickering once. The car slowed beside them. Harriet leaned out the window. Miss Marple, I saw you walking this way. Do you need a lift? Her voice was simple and bright. No fuss, just concern. Miss Marple gave a small nod. Yes, Harriet, to Arkwell Manor. Harriet blinked. At this hour? Yes, Miss Marple said. That is why. Harriet unlocked the passenger door. Miss Marple climbed in first. Doctor, Hale followed, still gripping his bag. Harriet turned the car toward the narrow road leading out of Weatherby. The first curve came quickly. Wind pushed against the Morris. Rain tapped the windows. Not loud yet, just steady. Harriet drove carefully. She always did. Miss Marple watched the trees along the road. Their branches leaned low from the gathering storm. Some bent more than usual. Some shook gently even when the wind paused. Miss Marple filed that away. Small movements often revealed more than large ones. Dr. Hale breathed, slowly beside her. Miss Marple observed him without turning her head. The stiffness of his jaw, the way he checked his bag twice, the way he watched the road as though expecting something to appear. His mind was already at Arkwell Manor, and Miss Marple's mind had gone there too. The Morris reached the long lane. The trees thickened on both sides. Branches stretched overhead, forming a shaded passage. The rain darkened the ground. Harriet slowed even more. "No need for speed," she said. Miss Marple approved. Haste hid details. Care revealed them. They reached the final bend. The manor came into view. Large, quiet, set back from the road, and every window glowed. Not a few. Not the usual ones. Every single window. Ground floor, upper floor, side rooms, hallway rooms, all blazing with bright light. Harriet frowned. "That's odd." Mrs. Arkwell was always careful with electricity. Dr. Hale leaned forward. "She never leaves more than one lamp lit." Miss Marple stared at the windows. She counted them quietly, then counted again. The pattern felt wrong. Too many lights, too soon, too bright for illness, too coordinated for panic. She lowered her voice. "Most strange," Miss Marple whispered. The three of them stepped through the front door of Arkwell Manor. A wide hall opened before them. Bright light spilled from every lamp. Not soft light, not thoughtful light, just bright. Bright in a way that felt careless, bright in a way that pressed against the eyes. Miss Marple paused for a moment. She took in the hall slowly. She liked to start with the obvious, then the overlooked. Patterns mattered, and this one felt wrong from the first second. The chandelier blazed at full strength. The wall lamps burned steadily. Even the small reading lamp on the side table glowed. All switched on, all at once. Miss Marple folded her hands gently. "Someone was in a hurry," she said. Not accusing, just observing. Harriet Bloom nodded. She felt it too, a kind of unsettled warmth in the air. Too warm for a house that should have felt quiet. Dr. Rowan Hale moved quickly toward the chair by the stairs. His medical bag lay open on the seat, half open in fact. The clasp had not been touched by him. He had seen it closed when he left his house. His eyes tightened. Miss Marple stepped closer. She didn't speak. She simply watched him. People revealed more in silence. Dr. Hale checked his bag. Items were shifted. Nothing missing yet. But something had been disturbed. Footsteps sounded near the staircase. A figure appeared at the base of the steps. Mr. Conrad Mileson. The chemist. Miss Marple had met him only once before. He was usually calm, precise, measured in his speech. Today, he looked strained. His eyes held a fixed stiffness. His gloves dripped lightly. Miss Marple noticed the water. Not rainwater. Something thinner, something cleaner. She would think about that. Later. "You're here already?" Dr. Hale asked. Mileson nodded quickly. "Yes. Nurse Penn called me as well." His voice cracked at the end, not heavily, just enough to show nerves. "Doctor?" Hale frowned. "She barely had time to call me." Mileson looked away. Miss Marple watched the exchange. Timing mattered, especially when people arrived faster than logic allowed. She tucked her small umbrella against her arm. Observing was easier with free hands. Harriet Bloom stepped aside, giving the men space, but her eyes scanned the room. She noticed the curtains had been pulled back unevenly. Miss Marple saw her look. She gave a small, approving nod. Harriet had good instincts, sometimes scattered, but good. Mileson shifted in place. His gloves dripped again. Miss Marple studied the pattern of the drops on the floor, a neat line, not scattered. A line meant movement, purposeful movement. She tucked that away too. "Doctor." Hale took a slow breath. "Where is Nurse Penn?" Mileson pointed upward. "Upstairs. She's with Mrs. Arkwell." Miss Marple listened for the house's natural sounds. Houses always spoke in their own way. Floors creaked, walls settled, voices rose and fell. But this house felt tight, held, as if waiting for something. Then a voice cut through the hall. Not a scream, not panic, just sharp urgency. It came from the upper landing, followed by another and another. Urgent voices echoed from upstairs. Nurse Eliza Penn appeared at the top of the staircase. Her breath came in short bursts. Her hands clutched the railing. Her face showed clear strain. Not fear, not shock, just deep concern mixed with confusion. A nurse rarely showed panic, but something had broken her usual calm. She hurried down the stairs, her shoes tapped quickly on each step. Miss Marple watched her approach. She read the small details. The tight jaw, the shallow breaths, the slight shake in her left hand. Signs of a situation already gone too far. "Eliza, doctor," Hale said quietly. "What's happened?" Nurse Penn paused before them. Her voice came out thin. "Mrs. Arkwell is gone." She swallowed. "She passed a few minutes ago." Harriet Bloom gasped softly. Mr. Milson stepped back. Dr. Hale closed his eyes for one moment, then opened them. He steadied himself. "Show me," he said. Eliza hesitated. "There's more," she added. Her voice dipped lower. "Doctor, you collapsed beside her." Dr. Hale blinked. "I collapsed?" "Yes. You fell near the foot of the bed. You were unconscious for a short time." Miss Marple turned her head slightly. Not in surprise. In calculation. Collapsing in a sick room could mean many things. Health, exhaustion, or something near the patient. She kept her thoughts quiet. Dr. Hale pressed his hand to his forehead. He tried to recall details. "I remember examining her. Then, nothing." Nurse Penn nodded. "That is all. I saw as well. I thought you fainted from shock." Dr. Hale frowned. "I do not faint." Miss Marple listened closely. The order of events mattered. Timing mattered even more. She stored every word. Eliza continued. "When I tried to check your pulse, I looked for your stethoscope." She paused again. "It wasn't there." Dr. Hale stiffened. "What do you mean?" "It was gone," she whispered. "I searched the floor, the table, the chair. It was nowhere." Miss Marple's eyes lowered thoughtfully. A missing tool during a death was never a small matter. People misplaced things every day. But not doctors. Not during an emergency. Especially not a tool in their hand, seconds before a collapse. Harriet Bloom covered her mouth. "Is that possible?" Miss Marple answered softly. "Yes, possible, and notable," Eliza continued. The room smelled faintly strange. A bitter scent, very light, but present. Dr. Hale looked up sharply. "A bitter smell?" "Yes," Eliza said. "Not strong, just enough for me to notice." Miss Marple understood the weight of that detail. Bitterness in a sick room had meaning. Specific meaning. She kept her face calm. She never rushed her conclusions. "Take us to the room," Dr. Hale said. Eliza nodded and turned. Her steps were quicker now, not frantic, just urgent. They moved toward the staircase. Miss Marple stood at the base of the first step. She heard the house breathe around them. The hum of lights. The faint whistle from a window not fully shut. Small sounds, but strange in their timing. Eliza reached the landing. Dr. Hale followed. Harriet went next. Milson hesitated. Miss Marple watched him. 1 second longer, 2 seconds too long. Then he followed. Miss Marple placed her foot on the first step, and then she heard it. Footsteps pounded on the staircase. Inspector Mason Slackley arrived within minutes. His boots sounded firm on the entrance tiles. He carried a small notebook. He always did. His manner was plain, direct. No fuss, just the steady approach of a man who disliked confusion. He took one long look at the bright hall. His eyebrows lowered slightly. "All lights on?" he asked. Dr. Hale nodded. "Not by me." Slackley wrote a short note, then closed his notebook with a quiet snap. "Right," he said. "House is sealed. No one leaves. No one enters." Harriet Bloom stepped back. Mr. Mileson swallowed. Nurse Eliza Penn stood still, her hands folded tightly. Miss Marple watched them all. The inspector's presence always shifted a room. People revealed themselves in small reactions. She paid attention to each one. Slackley moved up the staircase. Miss Marple followed behind him. Slow, steady steps. She preferred to watch the edges of the scene. Most people stared at the obvious. She watched what they missed. The landing felt warm. Too warm for a room where someone had just died. She noticed the air first, then the small objects around the landing. Nothing dramatic, just little things put slightly out of place. Inspector Slackley entered Mrs. Arkwell's bedroom. Miss Marple stepped inside as well. He did not stop her. He knew her reputation, and he respected her quiet method. The room was tidy, unnaturally tidy. Miss Marple noted that at once. Bedsheets smoothed, tables straightened, a lamp angled neatly. Too neat for a sudden death, too neat for panic. Someone had tidied in a hurry. Slackley looked to Dr. Hale. "Show me." Dr. Hale pointed to the foot of the bed. "That is where I collapsed." Slackley crouched. He found no broken wood, no loose carpet, nothing to trip a man. He gave Miss Marple a brief glance. She returned a small nod. She agreed. Nurse Penn stood near the side table. Her hands shook slightly now. Miss Marple stepped close. Her eyes drifted to a folded paper on the table. A prescription slip. Creased, water-stained. Not from spilled water. The stain had patterns, uneven. Miss Marple tucked that thought away. She lifted it gently. A simple motion, harmless on the surface. But she studied the writing. Dr. Hale used black ink, always black. Today's prescription was blue. A soft, washed-out blue. A shade used by someone else. Inspector Slackley asked questions. Short ones. Direct ones. Nurse Penn answered first. Dr. Hale answered next. Mileson spoke too quickly. Harriet spoke too quietly. Slackley wrote everything down. Miss Marple listened. She watched the order of words. The hesitations, the misplaced details, the timing. Then she looked at the glass on the bedside table. It sat a little off-center. Not a major thing. Not a clue most people would bother with. But glasses rarely moved themselves. Someone touched it. After the doctor collapsed. After the nurse panicked. Or before. Timing again. Always timing. Miss Marple folded the water-stained prescription slowly. She had seen what she needed. Slackley moved on to another question. The room's attention shifted. Eyes turned away. Miss Marple made one small decision. Quiet. Steady. Necessary. She slipped the prescription into her handbag. Inspector Slackley signaled to Sergeant Lake. "Bring the lamp," he said. Lake nodded and left the room. Miss Marple remained near the doorway. She watched movement in the hallway. Every small shift mattered, especially today. Sergeant Lake returned with a square metal case. He placed it on the floor. He opened it calmly. Inside lay a portable ultraviolet lamp. He checked the switch, then waited for Slackley's signal. "Go ahead," Slackley said. Lake lowered the lamp near the marble tiles of the landing. He clicked the switch. A soft hum filled the air. A faint glow spread across the floor. Harriet Bloom stepped back. Mr. Mileson stiffened. The marble changed slowly. Not in color, in pattern. Thin shapes appeared. Uneven at first, then clearer. Miss Marple leaned slightly forward. Not too close. Just enough to observe. Footprints. Faint, smudged, but unmistakable. They moved across the landing in a thin trail. Toe to heel, heel to toe. A person had walked quickly, not in panic, but with purpose. Inspector Slackley knelt beside them. He brought the lamp closer. The glow sharpened. The edges of the prints brightened. Almost a soft shimmer. "Silver nitrate," he said. Sergeant Lake nodded. "It reacts under this light." Miss Marple folded her hands. Silver nitrate was used in laboratories, chemistry rooms, medical stores, places where careful handling mattered. It stuck to skin easily. It could smear on floors if not washed off. She thought about that. She thought about gloves. Wet gloves. Her eyes drifted toward Mr. Conrad Mileson. He swallowed. Hard. His eyes darted left. Then right. His gloves hung damp from his hands. The same gloves he claimed were wet from the rain. But the drops had fallen in a straight line earlier. Too neat for weather. A small detail. But details mattered. Slackley looked at Mileson. You said you only just arrived. Mileson nodded quickly. Yes. Nurse Penn called me. I came as fast as I could. Lake moved the lamp nearer to Mileson's shoes. Miss Marple watched him freeze. Not fully, just slightly, but enough to notice. The footprints continued past the landing. Miss Marple followed the line with her eyes. The trail did not go toward the bedroom. It went the other way, down the hall, toward the narrow rear corridor. She spoke softly. Sergeant, follow the pattern. Lake nodded. He lifted the lamp. He walked slowly, guiding the faint glowing shapes. Harriet Bloom pressed a hand to her mouth. The glow traced a clear path now. Not random, not wandering. A directed route. Inspector Slackley followed behind Lake. Miss Marple walked last, her steps steady, her eyes calm, her mind turning each clue like a small key. They reached the end of the hall. A narrow door stood there. Plain wood, simple handle, no ornament. A service door meant for quiet use. The footprints stopped right in front of it, then faded beyond the threshold. Sergeant Lake placed his hand on the knob. He looked back at Slackley. Slackley nodded once. Miss Marple's voice came quiet, measured, certain. Footprints led toward the servants' stairs. Inspector Slackley led the group back toward the landing. Sergeant Lake carried the UV lamp at his side now, switched off. The footprints had ended at the servants' stairs. But not the questions. Those had only grown. Miss Marple walked slowly. Her eyes drifted from object to object. She noted what had been touched, and what had been avoided. It painted a pattern, and patterns mattered. Dr. Rowan Hale stood near the small table outside the bedroom door. His medical bag sat open again. He looked inside it with increasing confusion. Something is terribly wrong, he said quietly. Miss Marple stepped closer. She did not interrupt. She simply waited. Dr. Hale lifted items from the bag, one by one. Thermometer, bandages, small bottles, a folded cloth. Everything looked in place. Then he reached the bottom of the bag and stopped. A thin line formed between his brows. He reached inside again. He pulled out a stethoscope, a shiny one, brand new, not his own. The metal gleamed in the hall light. The tubing was crisp, unused. Doctor. Hale held it up slowly. This is not mine, he said. His voice carried more confusion than anger. I have never used this, never purchased it. Inspector Slackley stepped forward. Where did that come from? Dr. Hale shook his head. I do not know. It was hidden at the bottom of my bag. He turned the chest piece. There was an inscription. Miss Marple read it without touching it. For Nurse Penn, with gratitude, L.A. Harriet Bloom gasped softly. Dr. Hale looked at Nurse Eliza Penn. She took one step back. Her face drained of color. Inspector. I've never seen that before, she whispered. Her hands trembled slightly. A rare sight for her. She was composed even during emergencies. Her reaction mattered. Slackley narrowed his eyes. Are you sure? Yes, she said firmly. I would never accept a gift like that. Not secretly, and certainly not from someone with initials L.A. Dr. Hale looked troubled. Lydia Arkwell, he murmured. Mrs. Arkwell. The patient. The woman who had just died. The woman whose estate was complicated. The woman who trusted her nurse completely. Sergeant Lake reached for the stethoscope. He examined the inscription under the hall lamp. Fresh engraving, he said. Not old, not used. Miss Marple nodded. She studied Nurse Penn's posture. Not rigid, not defensive, just deeply unsettled. Mr. Mileson shifted behind them. His shoes scraped the floor. He avoided eye contact. He pulled his gloves slightly higher on his wrists. Miss Marple noticed. She always noticed small adjustments, especially nervous ones. Slackley raised his voice slightly. "Mr. Milson, step forward." Milson hesitated, then obeyed. Slowly. He looked at the stethoscope. His throat tightened visibly. "Why would this be hidden in Dr. Hale's bag?" Slackley asked. Milson shook his head too quickly. "I have no idea. None at all." Miss Marple watched his eyes. They did not match his voice. A common problem among liars. Voices lied first, eyes lied last, and rarely together. Eliza Penn stood still. Her distress remained steady, not exaggerated, not forced, just honest. Miss Marple made her conclusion quietly, to herself, based on tone, based on posture, based on human nature, and on a lifetime of observing truth in small places. Miss Marple believed her. The group reached Dr. Rowan Hale's surgery in Wetherby within minutes. The building sat quietly at the edge of the high street. A simple door, a modest sign, a place used for routine checkups and calm appointments. Today, it felt different. The air around the door held a quiet tension. Dr. Hale unlocked the door with shaking hands. He pushed it open carefully. Miss Marple stepped in behind him. She looked around slowly. She liked this surgery. It was neat, predictable, organized by someone who trusted order. But today, the order had shifted. The reception desk lamp was still on. A file lay open on the counter. A pen rested on the edge, as if placed down too quickly. Not dramatic, just wrong. Harriet Bloom stayed near the door. She didn't like medical rooms. They made her nervous. But she remained. She wanted to help. Inspector Slackley moved forward. He examined the waiting chairs, then the door to the inner office. "Doctor," he said, "open it." Dr. Hale nodded. He pushed the door to his private room. The lock gave a faint click. The door swung inward. Miss Marple was the first to notice the safe. It stood against the far wall. The keyhole showed deep scratches. Fresh ones. Not from age, not from accident, from pressure. Someone had tried to open it in haste. Slackley stepped closer. He traced the scratches with his thumb. "Not done with skill," he said. "Done quickly." Dr. Hale looked shaken. "Who would break into my safe?" His voice remained soft, more confused than angry. Miss Marple stepped toward a nearby shelf. 2 small vials rested there, both labeled aminolin. Same size, same handwriting, placed neatly side by side. At first glance, nothing unusual. But Miss Marple lifted one. She held it carefully. She unscrewed the top. She leaned slightly. A faint smell reached her. Bitter. Sharp. Recognizable to someone with long memory. She closed her eyes briefly. She had encountered the scent before. Long ago. In another case. She replaced the lid. She handed it to Dr. Hale. He sniffed. His face changed instantly. "Almonds," he whispered. Slackley looked at him. "You're certain?" "Yes," Dr. Hale said. "That is cyanide." Harriet let out a soft gasp. Mr. Milson's posture tightened. His hands clasped together. His eyes darted toward the door. Miss Marple examined the second vial. No smell. Proper contents. Lid secure. She placed both back on the shelf, side by side. But her mind sorted them in separate boxes. One safe, one deadly. Inspector Slackley turned toward Milson. "You said you handled medicines for the manor?" "Yes," he said quickly. "But I never touched these. Never." Miss Marple watched him closely. His voice ran ahead of his thoughts. His eyes lagged behind his words. A mismatch again. Slackley stepped toward the counter. He scanned the floor, then the cabinet doors. He reached for one handle. Before he touched it, a loud crash sounded. From inside the room, Harriet jumped. Milson froze. Dr. Hale stepped back. Miss Marple stayed perfectly still. She listened. The sound came from behind the counter. A crash, someone hiding behind the counter. Inspector Slackley moved fast. He signaled Sergeant Lake toward the counter. Lake stepped forward with care. The crash had come from a low shelf behind it. Miss Marple did not move. She watched the shadows. A shift there revealed more than sound. Lake reached the side of the counter. He crouched. His voice stayed calm. "Come out," he said. No reply, only the faint scrape of a shoe against the floor. Slackley stepped forward. He kept his tone firm. "Edward Arkwell," he said. "I know you're there." A long breath escaped from behind the counter. Then a hand appeared, thin, nervous, trembling slightly. Edward Arkwell rose slowly. He looked pale. His jacket was wrinkled, his hair uneven. He did not look dangerous. He looked cornered. Harriet Bloom gasped softly. Nurse Eliza Penn covered her mouth. Miss Marple simply watched him. She examined his posture first, then his eyes, then the dirt on his cuffs. Every detail told part of the story. Slackley stepped closer. "What are you doing here?" Edward swallowed. I was frightened." "Why hide?" Slackley asked. Edward hesitated. He did not answer. Lake searched him quickly. Routine, efficient. He checked pockets, sleeves, folds of the jacket. Then Lake froze. His hand stopped at the inner coat pocket. He pulled something out, a small vial, clear glass, label neat, identical to the two in the surgery. "Aminolin," Lake read aloud. Slackley's voice hardened. "Doctor, check it." Dr. Rowan Hale stepped forward. He opened the vial. He smelled the contents. He closed it quickly. His face changed. "That is not aminolin," he said. His voice stayed controlled, but the meaning hung in the air. "Another poison," he continued. "Not as strong as cyanide, but dangerous." Edward's eyes widened. No, I didn't know that was in my pocket." Slackley raised an eyebrow. "You expect us to believe that?" Edward nodded desperately. "Yes, I swear it." Miss Marple watched the exchange. She paid attention to the phrasing. He said he didn't know it was in his pocket. Not that he had never touched it. A small difference, but important. She also noticed something else. His coat showed no marks from the surgery shelf. No dust. No powder. If he had taken the vial from the other two, he would have brushed against the cabinet. But he hadn't. His coat was too clean. Slackley stepped back. He folded his arms. "Why run?" he asked. Edward looked down. "I heard voices," he said. "I panicked. I thought you would blame me." Mileson shifted behind them. Quietly, carefully. Miss Marple turned her head slightly, just enough to see him. He avoided her eyes again. Slackley held up the vial. 3 vials, 3 labels, 3 matching names. Dr. Hale nodded. "And yet," he said, 3 different contents." The room fell still. Harriet Bloom whispered, "Why would anyone do that?" No one answered. Miss Marple looked at the 3 vials, side by side in her mind. Same handwriting, same label, different truths. Her voice came soft, measured, certain. 3 vials, only one truth. Inspector Slackley led everyone back into Dr. Hale's private office. The room felt smaller now, tighter, as if the walls listened. Miss Marple stood near the side shelf. She watched the details again. They never failed her. Dr. Hale opened his desk drawer. Inside lay the narcotics ledger, a thick book, worn at the corners, used daily, trusted. He placed it on the table. Slackley nodded to him. "Turn to yesterday's entries." Dr. Hale flipped pages slowly. His fingers moved with care. He reached the correct page, then froze. Miss Marple noticed the moment his breath changed. A slight pause, a shift of air, small but telling. "These entries," he whispered. "They're wrong." Slackley leaned closer. "What do you see?" Dr. Hale pointed to the lines in the middle of the page. The handwriting was neat, but wrong. The ink was blue. Dr. Hale always used black, a rule he never broke. Miss Marple stepped closer. Her eyes moved across the page. She remembered the water-stained prescription, blue ink, washed-out strokes. The exact shade now in the ledger. She folded her hands. Patterns aligned more clearly. Slackley asked, "Who else uses this book?" Dr. Hale answered quietly, "Only myself, and Mr. Mileson, On rare occasions. Mileson tensed. He took one step back. Harriet Bloom watched him with wide eyes. The inspector turned. "Mr. Mileson," he said. "Come forward." Mileson hesitated. His shoes barely moved. His throat tightened. He looked like a man standing at the edge of a truth he could no longer avoid. Slackley waited. No pressure. Just silence. Silence often forced answers. Mileson finally stepped forward. His gloves were gone now. His hands shook slightly. He stared at the ledger. He didn't speak at first. Slackley asked again, "Did you alter these entries?" Mileson closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. His voice came out low. "Yes," he swallowed. "I changed the dates and the amounts. I did it last night." Harriet gasped. Dr. Hale exhaled sharply. Miss Marple did not move. She watched Mileson's posture. The tension in his shoulders softened, a sign of confession, not deceit. Slackley spoke calmly. "Why?" Mileson looked at the floor. "Debts," he said. "I owed money, more than I could pay. They pressured me. I was told to adjust the records. Just a few lines. Nothing serious." He stopped himself. He realized how foolish the words sounded. "Nothing serious," he repeated quietly, then shook his head. "It was wrong, but I didn't harm anyone. I swear I didn't." Slackley questioned him further. "How were the labels made?" "Told to rewrite them," Mileson said. "Same handwriting. Same spelling. They wanted it to look routine. And the vials. I never touched them," he insisted. "I didn't poison anyone." Miss Marple listened closely. His voice carried guilt, but not for murder. His fear felt genuine. His shame felt real. But shame covered many things, not always the right ones. She looked at the ledger again, then at the prescription hidden in her handbag. Blue ink. Same shade. Same hand. But motive still unclear. Something didn't fit. Not yet. Miss Marple lifted her chin slightly. Miss Marple knew. More was hidden. The group returned to Arkwell Manor just after midday. The clouds hung lower now. The air felt heavier. Not stormy yet, just close. Miss Marple noticed the quiet first. The kind of quiet that settles after confusion. A heavy, listening quiet. Inspector Slackley opened the front door. The lights were still on, all of them. No one had switched anything off. Harriet Bloom stepped inside slowly. She stayed close to Miss Marple. The house felt different now. Not chaotic, just watchful. Dr. Rowan Hale lay on the drawing-room sofa. He had been placed there earlier after they returned from the surgery. A blanket covered him. Nurse Eliza Penn knelt beside him, checking his pulse again. Her hands were steady now. Her training returned. Her calm returned, too. Dr. Hale stirred as Miss Marple approached. His eyes opened. He blinked, trying to remember the room. Nurse Penn leaned closer. "Doctor, you fainted again for a moment," she said quietly. He nodded once, then looked toward Miss Marple. "I remember something," he said. His voice was low, weak, but clearer than before. Miss Marple moved a little closer. She did not speak. She let him gather his thoughts. "I smelled it," he said, "the moment before I collapsed." Harriet stepped forward. "What did you smell, Doctor?" He closed his eyes briefly. "Almonds," he whispered. "The same bitter scent as before." Miss Marple folded her hands gently. A faint nod. A detail she expected. A detail that mattered. She had suspected a connection. Now she heard it confirmed. "Doctor," Hale continued, "I felt dizzy. The smell grew stronger. Then everything went dark." Nurse Penn watched him with deep concern. Mileson lingered by the doorway. He avoided the doctor's eyes. Avoided everyone's eyes. Miss Marple noticed. Inspector Slackley asked, "Where exactly were you standing?" Dr. Hale pointed toward the staircase. "Right there, at the foot of the stairs, facing the landing." Miss Marple remembered that position clearly. It placed him close to the bedroom door, close to the handle, close to the place where the shock had occurred. She lowered her gaze, then lifted it again. Her mind sorted the timeline. She placed each detail neatly. Almond scent, sudden collapse, missing stethoscope, bright lights, altered ledger, footprints leading to the servants' stairs. Nothing aligned neatly yet. But one detail stood out. One detail called for attention. The bedroom door. She turned toward it. A simple wooden door. Plain. Unremarkable at first glance. But doors hid stories. Doors carried signs. A handle could hold more truth than a full conversation. She never ignored such things. "Inspector," Miss Marple said softly. Slackley turned toward her. "Yes?" She looked at the door with calm certainty. "I would like to see the room once more." Harriet swallowed. "Again?" "Yes," Miss Marple replied gently. "Some details speak only when the house grows quiet." The hall felt still. The air pressed lightly around them. No footsteps now. No raised voices. Just waiting. Miss Marple took a step forward. Her shoes made a soft sound on the wooden floor. A steady sound. A sound of purpose. She reached the first stair, then paused. And then she stepped toward it. Miss Marple reached the landing again. The bedroom door stood quiet in front of her. Nothing had changed. Nothing moved. Yet the air felt different now. More settled. More revealing. Houses often spoke after the noise faded. Inspector Slackley stood beside her. "Careful," he said. Miss Marple gave a small nod. "I will not touch it carelessly," she replied. Her eyes rested first on the handle. A plain brass handle. Simple shape. Ordinary to most. But not today. She leaned a little closer. Her gaze narrowed. She did not reach out. She only looked. Looking often solved more than touching. A faint shimmer rested on the top curve of the handle. Not bright, not dramatic. Just a thin glint when the hallway light caught it. Miss Marple recognized that glint. Old memory. Careful memory. "Inspector," she said softly. "Could you bring the small lamp closer?" Slackley signaled Harriet Bloom. Harriet fetched the small reading lamp from the side table. She held it out with steady hands. Miss Marple angled her head. The light washed across the handle. Droplets. Tiny droplets. Clear. Round. Not water. Not oil. Mercury. Miss Marple spoke quietly. "Droplets of quicksilver. Someone placed them deliberately." Dr. Hale stepped forward in surprise. "That would conduct electricity at once," he said. Miss Marple nodded gently. "Yes, and beautifully." Harriet frowned. "Beautifully?" Miss Marple smiled kindly. "In a scientific sense, my dear. Not pleasant. Just effective." She pointed with the tip of her umbrella. Never her fingers. "Look closely," she said. "There is more." Slackley leaned in. He saw a faint grey dust along the lower part of the handle. Graphite. Miss Marple tapped the umbrella lightly on the floor. "That is graphite powder. It improves conduction." Milson swallowed nervously. "You mean someone electrified the handle?" Miss Marple answered softly. "Yes, during a storm. The house lights were on. The wires were active. A person touching this would receive a sharp shock." Dr. Hale stared at the handle. "That explains the collapse," he said. "I felt dizzy immediately. My hand went numb. Then everything went black." Miss Marple did not look away from the door. She studied the area around the handle. No fingerprints, no smudges. Too clean. Cleaned after the deed. Someone was careful. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. Harriet whispered, "But why would anyone do that?" Miss Marple answered gently. "To disable the doctor. Quickly, quietly. Before he could see something he was not meant to see." Slackley folded his arms. "Someone planned this with precision." "Yes," Miss Marple said. "Mercury does not fall onto door handles by chance. Graphite does not appear without intention." She stepped back from the door. Her eyes moved slowly from the handle to the floor, then to the hallway, then to the dark corners no one else noticed. "All of this," she said in a calm voice, "required preparation." The house felt very still. Everyone waited. Everyone sensed the weight of her words. Miss Marple looked again at the shining droplets. Soft light touched them. They held their shape. They held their truth. Her conclusion was quiet, certain, measured. This was planned. Everyone gathered in the drawing room. The lamps glowed softly. Chairs stood in a loose circle. No one spoke. Inspector Slackley remained near the mantel. Dr. Hale sat quietly. Nurse Eliza Penn folded her hands tightly. Harriet Bloom stayed close to Miss Marple. Mr. Mileson lingered near the window, and Edward Arkwell stood alone, avoiding every glance. Miss Marple looked around the room. Her voice came calm, gentle, precise. "We have all the pieces now," she said. "They fit together neatly, once we place them in the proper order." No one interrupted. Even the house seemed to listen. Miss Marple began. First, the false vial, one labeled aminolin, but filled with cyanide. It was placed on the surgery shelf, not by the doctor, not by the nurse. Someone who needed quick access, someone familiar with the house, someone who touched the medical stores recently. Her eyes moved to Edward. He shifted slightly. Second, she continued, the tampered ledger. Blue ink, not the doctor's ink, not his handwriting. The same shade as the water-stained prescription I found. Mr. Mileson altered records. He confessed. He did so under pressure. But the ledger forgery served a separate purpose. To confuse the timeline, to hide the missing bottle. Mileson lowered his head. Miss Marple did not linger on him. She moved on gently. Third, the missing stethoscope. Taken from Dr. Hale's bag, replaced with a brand new one. Inscribed for Nurse Penn. A clever distraction. But false gifts always reveal their maker. The engraving was fresh, done hurriedly, by someone with access to the manor's tools. Nurse Penn looked relieved. Her innocence showed clearly now. Miss Marple nodded kindly to her. Fourth, the electrified doorknob, she said softly. A cruel but efficient trick. Mercury and graphite, both placed intentionally, both used to conduct current. The storm powered it. The doctor touched it. He collapsed instantly, just as the killer intended. Harriet shivered. Dr. Hale listened carefully. His expression tightened. Fifth, Miss Marple continued, the emergency call. Nurse Penn never made it. The call came from within this house. Someone imitated her voice. Someone who practiced. Someone who needed all of us here quickly. Slackley nodded slowly. He saw the pattern forming. And lastly, Miss Marple said, the lights left blazing. Every room, every hallway. Not by accident. The killer needed them on, to hide movement, to hide the glow of chemicals, to hide the work on the door handle. She paused. She looked at each face. She let the quiet deepen. Mrs. Lydia Arkwell was going to change her will, Miss Marple said softly. She planned to leave most of her estate to charity, to the village hospital, only a small portion to family, and her nephew knew it. Edward's breath caught. Slackley turned sharply. Harriet covered her mouth. Miss Marple finished gently. The killer is Edward Arkwell. He staged the scene. He altered the call. He hid the vial. He planned to inherit everything. And he nearly succeeded. The house fell still. No one moved. No one spoke. The room fell silent as truth landed. The storm over Weatherby began to fade. The wind softened. The branches outside the manor moved with less weight. Inside, the room settled into a quiet calm, the kind that follows truth, the kind that lets people breathe again. Inspector Slackley stepped into the hall. He spoke with Sergeant Lake in low tones. Nurse Eliza Penn sat beside Dr. Hale. Both looked tired, relieved but tired. Harriet Bloom fetched a fresh pot of tea, her hands finally steady. Miss Marple stood near the staircase. She looked toward the bedroom door one last time. The handle lay dull now, clean, safe. The danger had passed, but the lesson had not. She lifted her gloves. She folded them neatly. Then she spoke in her soft, familiar way. People justify their wrongs, she said, long before they commit them. It begins with a small excuse, a tiny thought, a quiet wish. And then, one day, it becomes action. Harriet nodded slowly. Dr. Hale listened with respect. Even Slackley paused at the foot of the stairs. Miss Marple gave a gentle smile. "We must always watch the small things," she added. The house grew still. And somewhere, another secret waited. "Thank you for joining me tonight, friends. Tell me, what clue did you notice first? And where are you listening from this evening? I love reading your thoughts. Your comments make this cozy corner feel alive. Be sure to share them below before you go refill your tea. And don't wander far. Tomorrow brings another mystery, another warm chair, another quiet secret waiting to be told. Tomorrow, another kettle will boil.